Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's session of Monthly Q's Critical Conversations for State and Local Government. We're excited to have you today here for our third session. Before we dive in today, just a few housekeeping notes. One, this session is being recorded and we'll send it out the on-demand link afterwards so you can rewatch with your colleagues. And second, we want this to be a conversation, so please feel free to submit your questions anytime using the chat or the Q&A panel, and we'll address as many as we can get through. Now I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers for today, Tim Cohn and Jimmy Ledbetter. Tim, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Courtney. My name is Tim Cohn. I'm an industry architect for our state and local government practice here at Quisitve. I work with all of our state and local government customers, and I work with our salespeople that are driving our work with our state and local government customers. So definitely appreciate everyone's time and energy here, and I'll pass it over to Jimmy Ledbetter.
Yep. Hey, everybody. So my name is Jimmy Ledbetter. I'm the VP of AI Strategy and Solutions here at Quisitve. So really appreciate everybody coming up and meeting with us today. So Tim, we're back to do round, I believe, 3. This is now of these conversations.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And so what we'd like to do in these sessions is go over our question basically and talk about that. And today it's Agentic AI in state and local government. What's hype? What do we see that's real and actually in progress with some of our customers? And then what's on the road ahead, right? What's coming down the pipe? We hear everything from it's going to make things really great to it's going to take over everyone's job. There's a space in between that, right, where AI is right now. And so we're going to talk about our actual experiences there.
Yep. So I think Tim, probably just starting off, talking about, like AI and SLG. One thing I just want to start with a story real quick. So, was really fortunate last week. I was actually with the city of Miami in Miami-Dade County, and we participated in their hackathon. And it was such an honor, like for them to, like we had the airport there, we had the city, we had PB, we had everybody there. And the one thing that showed up more often than not was the discussion of agents, so how were agents, how are they coming up? And we had these just absolute brilliant people. So I was really excited, and I didn't do any of the coding here. We actually had 2 groups take a set of agents. They're ready to take them into production after a couple of day hackathon. So it was fantastic to see how these people came together. They got excited. And what the use cases were. But the first question that they had was, and there was some trepidation there. They were like, if I learn all this stuff, am I learning myself out of a job? And I was like, so that's something that, and not just state and local government, but everybody is looking at, like, is this AI thing going to take my job away? And the one thing that everybody walked away from was the fact that it was able to really work on workloads that it already knew. Because I always say, remember, AI is not super creative. It's the accumulation of all the knowledge we have right now, but it's not the most creative thing in the world. You have to have a creative person behind the scenes. But one of the folks behind the airport was like, hey, my job is to go through and like find like these tickets. And so they wrote an agent to do all these tickets, and they're like, oh, great. I automated out my mundane piece of the job that I spent so much time on. Now I get to do the creative side. And the electricity went around the room so quickly, because now it was just that light bulb moment where it's like, oh, I can automate out the piece that I just really don't like doing. And now I'm actually able to get to that, we all have that cool thing called a backlog that none of us ever have the chance to get in on top of. And how do we take that next step and really get people excited about it?
Jimmy, I think that's a great observation from that hackathon. I've seen it. We did one in North Carolina, saw a similar result to that. And one of the things I continually hear from our state and local government customers is, hey, we've got open and unfilled position requisitions, right, for hiring new folks. We have some budget issues. We're not hiring more people right now. And I think the the transitioning of some of what, the mundane work, as you were calling it, or as the person in Miami was calling it, the mundane work, and transitioning that to an agent is one of those things that's going to help not only increase job satisfaction, but I think helps you get home on time, right? Because most state and local government departments are working with fewer people than they really could use, right? So I think that's where a lot of these agents come into play, and that's where we're really seeing some benefits and some time savings there. So that's a great observation from that.
And there's been this new idea coming up recently, and so back to like the title, what's hype, what's real, and what's coming. I think we're getting ready to start seeing agents in the org chart. So Microsoft's got this kind of idea. Like, how do we have these autonomous workers? And I think that when we're talking about like what's coming is, how do I have that person that I can call upon? Like here at Quisitve, we do this. We have what we call our cantata bot. Which is an agent that we use to do our timesheets. That is just a virtual employee that I can talk to, who could do the mundane piece of my job that I don't want to jump into another application to work on. That is a really good use of that person. So I think we're going to start seeing, hey, I have X number of direct reports, but then if you really need those kind of quick answer persons, those agents in the org charts are going to be showing up more often than not.
Yeah.
So what's hype? I hear. So controversial opinion. I don't believe we are ready as of November 30th, 2025 at 12:37 Eastern Standard Time. I don't think we are quite at the spot where we have that autonomous agent that you say, okay, here is agent one, and it goes and picks like a team of 15 people and does a task. Give me 2026, I'll figure it out. But I don't think that we're ready right now. What I do, so I think that is definitely on the hype train. What I think is grounded in reality, though, is the orchestrator agent who can find workflows. So instead of it assembling the team, I can go pick a workflow out and say, hey, I need to execute this workflow. So for example, Tim, you and I have both been doing SLG for a while, like permitting. Permitting has a very strict process. It follows, like, hey, I've got to contact person X. I've got to upload this document. I've got to talk to person, like, it is very A to B to C to D. That is a really good use. So there absolutely could be an orchestrator that says, oh, here's my permitting person, they then go that way, and then it follows a workflow. Here is, like for legislation, like I always say, I'm a former elected official, like, hey, give me the summarization of what my, like what's in my bill packet for this week. What am I going to vote on? What are the tax ramifications? You could actually have that agent working there. So I think that as we're starting to talk about like these agentics, the idea of right now having it assemble the team, I don't think is there, but it can call the workflow. Does that make sense? So
yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think there are specific processes that are agent friendly within the SLG workflows that I think that's real right now. I think there's a lot we can do for some of those specific processes. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I've seen in the hype train. So now one thing that I'm personally excited about, and Ignites next week, and I'm unfortunately locked under about 1,000 different NDAs right now. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming, and I can't wait to talk about like a lot of them. But what is here, and it is public knowledge, is the fact that Azure has put together what they call their agentic framework. And this, I literally just got off the phone with a law firm, and we just talked about this about an hour ago. Before there was kind of some disparate systems inside of Azure. There was prompt flow, which is how do I chain prompts out. There was AutoGen Studio, which was, like kind of this workflow tool. There's your model studios. There's all these. So Microsoft is finally, like they put their arms around this and said, let's just give you one tool set. And that is something I think is going to be so key, because we having the ability to create your own workflows, using that kind of, it's still pro code, but having that pro code with a GUI on the front of it, where you can actually see like, hey, I'm wanting to back to our permitting, hey, how do I want to how do I tie into X data store to pull the right data out? How do I do a hybrid search versus a semantic search? Like, how do I work with all of that? Like, all of those steps are here, and they're very, very real. So that's something that I'm really excited to see, is like every tool, like our state and local government, they're dying by licensing costs, $50 here, $75 here. Now that we've got this all in one centralized location, I think we're going to see scale adoption move a lot faster.
And Jimmy, what do you see as the growth pattern, basically, from an agency or a department using, starting off with Copilot perhaps, or Copilot in the browser, right? And then moving into, I mean, is it a Copilot Studio move next, and then into the Azure 8 agentic environment? What's the path that you're primarily seeing?
I think so. In our hackathon last week, we actually had 2 tracks. So track 1 was the the Copilot Studio track, and then track 2 was the pro code stack. And I promise I'm getting to the answer to your question. It was one of those things that we actually saw, a lot of people, like even on the pro code side, were just starting in Copilot Studio. How do I do a quick connection into something just to even validate that things are an AI use case? So one of the gents that I was working with, he was with the airport. He's a data scientist, so I'm a data scientist, and that was a lot of fun. But we were talking about like, hey, there's this, how do I educate my people on what the difference is between ML and AI? And so we actually just fired a Copilot Studio up and just said, hey, let's just test this thing out and see what it looked like. And we saw so many people go, oh, wait a second. There is they were able to see that. So, even just jumping in and using that as the prototyping piece was absolutely fantastic. So.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Utilizing Copilot Studio as your POC engine, or even first release engine for some of this stuff.
Well, yeah, and then what we start looking at is how many users are going to use it, and it's is this something that we can roll straight into production? Hey, we had one that they said that they've got this. It was a little 3-person team. We didn't need to over-architect this thing. It didn't have to go to that next step. I mean, now, Tim, you and I are technologists. We love to over-architect things. It's just fun. It's what we do. But it's not necessarily the right thing. And then we were saying hey, these people are going to use it this many times. It made sense to have that stay there. Now, the folks at the airport who did a phenomenal job they all did a phenomenal job, but they were hey, we're now going to have hundreds of thousands of people using this. It's this is something we've got to productionalize in a tool in Foundry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. And then in terms of what's coming, Jimmy, I know there's a lot of you kind of got a preview on Ignite. I mean, we can't really say too much about that until Ignite. Mm-hmm. But if there were particular tracks for people to look at, from whether it's the electronic version of Ignite or you're actually going to the conference, what do you have any suggestions for folks that want to really focus on agents or agentic AI at Ignite?
Why, yes, I do. So actually, so one of the things that our marketing team is doing right now is they actually asked all of us to come up with what is our recommended sessions at Ignite, around agents. So I think that here's the couple that I would I would recommend, so there's like your innovation sessions, build and manage your AI apps with a agent factory, I think is important. Like there's so many tools right now, and it's just like having that really like that 101 section where you can start off with how the tools start. I think it is a great way to look at that. I would always recommend the AI. Oh gosh, there's so many things coming to M365 Copilot that I really want to talk about, but I just can't. I promise I will pop on LinkedIn next week and talk about it. But there's some really great stuff in there. For you technologists, there is a great session called Build A2A and MCP Systems. With SWE agents and agent framework, that is going to be fantastic. A to A is agent to agent. How do we make them talk to each other? MCP is how do I give it a toolbox? So it's like, so I got my construction workers, got my toolbox. How do I make that together and make it work? A couple others that I think are really interesting, and this is kind of gets to the back to the what's real, what's coming, but like building AI applications in with Azure SQL databases. I think that is something we've all been so incredibly excited about unstructured data that we haven't really thought about. Most of our businesses run off structured data. So how do we start marrying those up? So there's a couple of great sessions coming up on that. The future of Power Platform, AI powered and enterprise grade. I've only got like 50 of these here. I'm trying to pick out the top ones. But I would also recommend like that marriage up between. There's several between AI and ML. I would highly recommend people brushing up on that because I actually saw this at the hackathon. Somebody did. We were doing like a low level ML work inside of there, and then the gen I was working with, he actually said, "Well, let me put it into a model." Found out it was pretty different. So understanding the differences between AI and ML is incredibly important. So.
Well, that helps. I think that's, what's coming is exciting. There are sometimes differences between enterprise and GCC tenants in both Azure and M365. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that as the technology moves forward. But I think I know Microsoft is doing everything they can to kind of bring those timelines closer together while still remaining compliant with all the necessary compliance frameworks that they do for their GCC tenants. So part of this is us talking. I think if there's any questions or we have any questions that have come through, I don't see any, but always interested in answering questions from the group. I think if your agency or anyone in your agency is interested in exploring Agentic AI, Quisitve does have what we call an AI design lab. So it's a pretty interesting and fascinating offering that we do, and we always find a lot of interesting things and interesting ways to apply agents within an agency when we do one of these design labs. Jimmy, any thought on?
I love partnering with people when we do these design labs. We actually did stuff with like Georgia DBHDD, where we help with like the use case identification. We help with the the tooling, and then honestly, like with them, we actually help present the budget to the commissioner. Where it's like we did that research, we helped them justify the spend. We all want to do the AI, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to pay for it too. And it's not like we just have infinite amounts of money. So that's something that our team does a phenomenal job on. Like how do we actually work with you all to not only identify that this use case is very, very real, but also how do we help you get this thing funded?
Yeah, how do we help you get funded, and are there any barriers to implementing a use case like that? Do you need data to be put in a particular place, right? Do you need data cleansing, or do you need restructuring, right? So we're working with a couple large transportation agencies on the West Coast to get their data into the right place to use agents, right, within their organization. And so we can cover a lot of that territory as well. And it usually starts with identifying where we can use these agentic AI agents and where we can and where we're going to have, and we can identify any issues that we might have, whether it's access or security or just the ability to utilize the data within the organization.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your insights today in this conversation. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We will see you on December 16th.